Oh, I got the small window up again. I forgot to take it off from the last time we streamed. Okay, but either way, welcome back to anyone who has tuned in up to this point. Try and wait a little bit longer for more people to show up if it's possible. A little bit of an odd time for us to be doing this as well, but this could be one of those big days that I was talking about right before I got out of town this weekend. But obviously, as you can see, I'm back, and yeah, we have a moderate risk. Things escalated pretty quickly overnight. So we'll get into this discussion momentarily here. I'm just waiting for this last hour to upload on the model. In fact, I think it just came in now, in fact, which is perfect. Couldn't ask for much better timing, really. Hope everybody had a good weekend, by the way. Like I said, I tried to keep the content running, but I got home a lot later than expected, so unfortunately I couldn't do a video yesterday. I missed the storms yesterday too, which I was really bummed out about. It actually looked like it was a decent setup too. Even when I'm not on here making videos, I'm almost always watching. I love Mother Nature. I love watching the weather and learning more about it. So obviously, I knew what was going on, but unfortunately I couldn't do anything about it. We didn't get back until about, I think it was about 3 a.m. this morning. It was a 5-hour drive from where I was in South Carolina. But it was a good time though. Ready to get back to it. In September, I will be heading back over there for a wedding, and I will be in the wedding actually. But to answer any questions, no, I'm not getting married. I don't know how I could perpetuate any kind of relationship if I'm going to try to keep doing this and other things I got going on in my life. But anyway, let's get into the details here. Alright, so here is our moderate today. Main area of concern is in between east central parts of South Dakota all the way towards west central parts of Minnesota. That is where the moderate risk is, and then the enhanced risk stretches all the way towards even the central part of the state, maybe even parts of the east central part of South Dakota, all the way towards parts of even Iowa, and of course Minnesota as well. Minneapolis is just barely outside of that enhanced risk there. But some very familiar areas which I've seen in years past that have dealt with derecho, potential derechos in this case, but previous derechos would be like Sioux Falls, for example. See Mason City, another familiar town, even though it's just outside that enhanced risk area, would be somewhere like Waterloo. But this is not unfamiliar territory for you guys. And the reason why I'm mentioning these areas that are outside of the moderate risk is because these derechos travel significant distances. So even if you're not inside the area of greatest concern, which is of course the moderate risk, even if you're in the slight risk, you have to be watchful, because you can still get hurricane force gust and beyond depending on how the environment's set up. And that's really going to be the main emphasis that we focus on with this discussion here. So again, like I mentioned, Waterloo, Minneapolis, just because you aren't in the orange or the red here does not mean you couldn't get something significant out of this. So we gotta stay on top of it today. Eau Claire as well, Cedar Rapids, I'm watching you too. It could be a pretty interesting, pretty long day. So if we look at the radar right now, not a whole lot going on. I know you see this severe thunderstorm watch and someone probably might be thinking, oh wow, it's already starting. No, this is really not what you think it is. It's just a couple storms that were left over last night from an MCS that have pulsed up severe here. The environment here is still pretty good ahead of time even, but it's the outflow from this storm that's going to help set the stage for a little bit later this evening. We actually have a good bit of time still before we actually have to cover the event itself, or the projected event, I should say at this point. We never want to say that it's a guaranteed event until we see it start to occur. So let's go ahead and take a look at those details, shall we? But just a quick little rundown. This is what we have for our warnings right now. These are your typical garden variety severe thunderstorm warnings, radar indicated hail and damaging winds, right at the bare minimum of the spectrum. And this watch is slated to remain in effect all the way up until. Wait, where is that watch actually? Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. I did meso discussion. Whoops. Sloppy today. Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so there's still a few hours left, but the peak is gonna probably be right about now, I would say. But yeah, that's really about it for right now with this setup. Of course, we're gonna get into the main part in just a moment here. Of course, I gotta set up the screen for that part. Right. Here we go. So another look again. This time we're looking at the official SBC site. This is our tornado threat, by the way. We will be watching for those as well, but this is mostly going to be involved with anything that pops up within the main line of storms we're expecting later this evening. The 5% area is basically that moderate to most of the enhanced risk area as well. And then, of course, here's our wind threat. This is going to be the main threat tonight. As I mentioned before, the hatched risk, we could easily see winds above 70 miles an hour. I think we could easily see hurricane force gust or greater with this. So, not really surprised to see this area. You usually aren't going to get this without a hatched risk. I think there's only been 1 or 2 times I've seen a moderate risk get issued without a hatched. So, nothing too far out of the norm there. Do have a hail threat today. No hatched risk there. I don't think hail is going to be a big issue. But then again, it's the summertime. Setups in the mid-levels and the mesoscale often can be a bit cumbersome to forecast. So I wouldn't be surprised if the potential was there for a larger hailstone to fall somewhere around the central part of our risk area today. But we'll wait and see how that pans out. But let's go ahead and take a look at our environment. We'll, of course, take a look at the upper air maps first. I'm going to use the beta map because I like the new beta website for pivotal weather a little bit more. It's just a preference thing. But we'll go ahead and start out with the 500. Hi, Mia. Well, let's go ahead and start out with the 500 millibar map. And we're actually going to go all the way back to 12Z. We always want to try to find the origin of the system whenever we do our forecasting here. Okay, I was trying to make sure the map was moving, because I've been having a lot of problems with that lately. So this is the mesoscale that we were just looking at on the radar right now. It's this storm system right here. And here's what I'm thinking, that the outflow boundary is going to help aid these later storms that are going to pop up as well. Because notice, by the time we get towards about 7 o'clock Eastern time, not a lot going on. You do see these short waves beginning to propagate here, and this is where our main interest area develops. There is a chance that the southern mode could start as the dominant mode, which would kind of pique my interest in regards to maybe an isolated supercell or two popping up. I'm not too sure how sold I am on that. I think everything's going to congeal rather quickly, especially once we start looking at the thermos, which you'll see in just a moment. But based off what I'm seeing here, predominantly, I think where our moderate risk is, I shouldn't expect much of a change of its location. I don't expect too much in the way of shifts to the south. If that happens, it's going to probably occur within the next couple of hours based off forecast models here. Keep in mind, though, we are still looking at 12Z, so we have a couple more HRRR runs to go. So incidentals, you gotta love them. But that's pretty much the general idea of the upper levels of the atmosphere. You can pretty much do a similar rundown looking at the 700 millibar, and it's going to relatively be the same thing. expect it to be pretty uniform in comparison to what we just saw in the 500. And one thing about the beta on this website is the fact that, well, unlike the normal website, it doesn't start back at 0 hour yet. It actually leaves off the hour you left off. It's a nice feature, but at the same time, you have to unlearn old habits. You know the saying, old habits die hard. But based off what I'm seeing here, this isn't too dissimilar from what we've seen. Short waves, of course, start to really propagate right at about maybe 7 o'clock Eastern, which would be 6 o'clock Central. So that's when I would expect storms to really start to fire. They really begin to come into their own right between the 9-10 o'clock hour in the central time zone here. So we'll see how things develop from that point. But I think this, just based off the wind profile alone, this storm system has the potential to last for a while. Its most destructive potential, of course, I would say is between like maybe 9 and 11 o'clock Central Time. We will be live for this, by the way. Can pretty much guarantee it. Unless something truly awful happens or the power goes out, something stupid. Alright, so let's go back a few hours because I am kind of curious about that tornado threat. Like I said, I think the potential is there for a sneaky supercell to pop up to the south, but I think the likelihood's pretty low. I think the thermals are kind of against discrete action, but I'm not going to rule anything out. Like I said, during the summertime, these little intricate parts of the mesoscale end up coming into play. See a little bit of low-level convergence here. And this is kind of why I'm sticking with the potential for it being there. Because if we look at the wind profile, you can see it. You can see this wind bar pointing here. You can see this wind bar pointing here. And it's low-level convergence that you want. It's upper air divergence that you want when you're looking at, let's say, the 500 millibar compared to the 850 here. But it seems like something's possible here. Low-level shear is, I guess you would say, sufficient enough, but it's nothing to be jumping off the walls about or anything like that. Alright, so let's go ahead now and take a look at the dew points. And I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. We've had plenty of crop transpiration or corn sweat going on here. So got plenty of lower level moisture feeding into these storms here. You can see the dew points easily reaching the 70s here in the purple. Really mid 60 dew points are just what you would be looking for. But keep in mind, temperatures are hot, so when you have that spread of temp and dew point being a little bit more drastic here, and this is a perfect example where we have the surface temperature at 88 compared to a dew point of 71. Despite it being as moist as it is, your cloud bases are going to be more elevated, and your mixing is going to happen a little bit higher up into the atmosphere. Lower level mixing tends to do a little bit better when it comes to tornadoes. So in this case, definitely leaning into that damaging wind threat pretty quickly. Plenty of instability available towards this environment as well. Cape's sitting at about 4,000 joules per kilogram. And when you have an environment like that, it's also really hard to get supercells to develop because they'll just want to form right on top of each other, essentially. So that's why I'm saying the possibilities there. The thermals are decent, but you're not going to get much in the way of venting as a result of that. But yeah, as far as low-level shear is concerned, it's not the most impressive environment either. If storm forms in the right place, you never know, though. But yeah, downdraft Cape is off the charts here, well over 1,000 joules per kilogram there. In fact, we're approaching that threshold of 1,200. Plenty of precipitable water, so not only will these storms have the potential to bring in some crazy wind, but also it's going to drop a lot of rain rather quickly. But yeah, if looking at this zodiograph here, this, like I said, nothing to really write home about. The directional profile at the lower levels, like the directional shear is there. The speed shear, not so much. It's really once you get towards the upper levels, and then that mixing is going to be set in such a way to where we just get everything kind of pushed downward. You want more rising motion with tornadoes. So essentially, that's a pretty good rundown of the environment over here where the storms are expected to fire. We're to go ahead and take a look next at the Cape again. And we're just going to look at areas out ahead of where we just pulled that sounding. Looking at that time frame, the amount of energy here is unheard of. Well, not unheard of. I've seen this before, but it's crazy. 5,300 joules per kilogram over here in this particular area. We were to click a sounding here. I mean, it would look pretty similar to what we just saw. It doesn't necessarily hone in on a particular hazard, at least on this hour. But if we were to go to the next one, and in fact, that sounding has 6,000 joules per kilogram of Cape here. A little bit of capping out ahead of where that main line develops, but by the time we get later into the evening, I would expect things to progress rather quickly. Also, since we're looking at the within the 18-hour range of when these storms fire, now we can use the latest model data here. I do find it interesting that they're still showing a pretty strong capping inversion as if the line already is passed at this point. So let me go back here. Yeah, okay, that's a little weird. Yeah, that low level inversion being there is a bit weird if you ask me, but marginal, yeah, okay, that might be a faulty sounding. Maybe there's something I'm missing. The storm's towards well, this is towards northern Nebraska, so it's a little bit more uncertain here, but even then I still think storms will make their way through there. That inversion isn't going to necessarily be enough unless the storms just end up being shifted north by the ridge, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that one. And it doesn't really look like based off how the, it doesn't really look like that's what's going to happen based off the energy that we have here, because that surface-based cape often ends up being drawn into the storms. So if we were going to see a northward shift with this, it will be on this model run here. Yeah, I don't really see that happening, so yeah, it's a little odd to see that. But you can see here pretty clearly, even as the line progresses further off towards the east and even heads into the overnight hours, there's more than enough energy to keep that sustained into the night. So lengthy stream ahead here, of course. Obviously, looking at other parameters that we've looked at earlier, we kind of know what the deal is at this point. We have solid thermodynamics. Like I said, as far as supercells are concerned, wouldn't expect much in the way of activity there. It's going to have to happen early, and I think everything's just going to kind of form on top of each other and then congeal into a line pretty quick. And the models kind of agree. See, it's right here around this early part of the time frame here where a potential supercell could form. But look how quickly that consolidates into a line. You already see the structure beginning to form here by the time we get towards 6 Central. And then before we know it, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, there's our potential bow echo, maybe even a derecho. And I normally don't like using that word derecho because a lot of people have had some really rough experiences with those. So as a result, I try not to trigger people, but today looks like the potential really might be there, you know. I don't like to rile people up here. This is not what this channel is about. We try to keep you ahead of things, though, and it does look like the potential's there. There's going to be a northward shift, might be with this part of the line, but like I said, I expect this to consolidate pretty early and really kind of ramp up as we get later into the evening. I'm still interested in the southern mode, but look what happens here. There's still storms set to fire over towards this area. These storms don't really die off. So again, I'm kind of confused with how that sounding ended up turning out the way it did, but maybe the model that comes in a little bit later today might give a little bit more clarity as to why that is. So looking at the rest, but basically like looking at the rest of this environment here, I think we're relatively set for some pretty significant weather tonight. There's a couple other things I'm gonna take a little bit of a closer look at just for the sake of being nosy. But outside of that, it's not really anything to write home about. It's nothing that we haven't seen before. Let me actually move this a little further off to the west here. There we go. I like that look a little bit better. Yeah, this definitely has that look of a damaging wind event. 100%. Just trying to catch a few soundings. I also plan on posting these into my Discord. If anyone that wants to take a look at that, you know where to go. Just by clicking this link here. What's up, Emmanuel? Big night later tonight, it looks like. Wow, Streamlabs bot is slow. Alright, so that's number one. I might post like maybe 3 of these in my server. Yeah. Well, it was interesting yesterday over there too. Especially with that NASCAR race. Speaking of which, did you hear the news about that? That's freaking cool, man. Okay, yeah, marginal tornado threat. Man, these Cape readings are some of the highest that I've seen in a long time. Like the D Cape on this one is insane, 1764. Oh, okay, that's interesting right there. This is probably the best tour sounding that I've seen from the environment today. I looked at it a little bit this morning, but not much. This is really the most in-depth I've gotten. Oh. Oh. I can only imagine what that sounds like. It's been years since I've been to a NASCAR race. I know I'm going to try to go later this year if it's at all possible. But we'll see what happens there. Okay. Yeah, I think that. Alright, that's 3 soundings. Okay. Okay. But yeah. A brother has won the Brickyard 400, by the way. For the first time ever. It's a beautiful thing. I'll tell you about it later. Or, well, just really look on the news. It's pretty much everywhere. Yeah. I mean, he's been good for a while, but you know. It's not that he lucked into it. He went and took that thing. So, yeah. We are taking over. That's besides the point, though, man. Just happy to see it. Okay, so in regards to the weather, are there any questions that y'all might have? Anything that you might be interested in looking at real quick? Because I'm probably going to do is after this discussion, I'm probably going to go to the gym early and then rest up. Because with these derechos, you never know how long they could cause a ruckus for. Especially when they're causing a serious ruckus like this one has the potential to. Like, the environment out here is crazy. Oh, I should have known. Daggone it, Emmanuel. But if you're being honest though, you know what? I'm not gonna go there. I can't go there because I will definitely get in trouble. Can't let you influence me, sir. I'm sorry. Cannot let you influence me. But you probably have a good idea of what I'm about to say, and no, you cannot say it in chat. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. But if anyone has any questions about any parameters, any concerns today about your area, well, really, even if you don't have severe weather, if you're wondering when you're going to get a break from the heat, you know what? Feel free to ask that too, because there is an end in sight. It's just the first half of this week's going to kind of suck. I'm just gonna outright say it, because just bringing the rental car back earlier today. Because the car I drive actually doesn't have AC. Like, the compressor blade's done, like, cooked. So, yeah. That was not a fun drive back home. What? 100% with a 2% margin of... What the heck, man? Like, what the... For a lot of us, that's what it is, but these next few days they're gonna be rough. Like, there's just really no sugarcoating it. There's really no other way to go about it. Like, it's only 1 o'clock here, and it's already 92. I think we're expected to get up to 97 with a heat index of like 105. Huh, Boondocks reference. Oh, yeah, wait, I do remember that reference now. I do remember that reference. Wasn't that like season 2, maybe? Was it? I think it was season 1 or 2 where that reference came in. Or it was an episode from like season 1 or season 2. I loved those first couple seasons. Started to get a little stale for me after that. It's still not bad, but it's not the same. I can't watch now without my boy though, Witherspoon. I don't know if I can watch without Witherspoon, man. That hurt my soul when he passed, man. All right. Any further questions, guys? Any questions at all? Because I'm probably gonna eat, rest up a bit, and then we're gonna get geared up for tonight's stream. I still don't have an exact time frame in which I could go live, or I don't have an exact time figured out, depending on what happens with the southern mode. Because if a supercell fires, then we'll go early. But I'm thinking right now, probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock would be the time frame. But I think once we get like storm initiation, we're just gonna really be off to the races from that point. Because I think everything's gonna start to progress pretty quickly from that point onward. There's just so much energy in the atmosphere, as you can see on the map here. Like, this is looking late into the evening. This isn't peak time with peak energy in the atmosphere. This is closer to what peak time looks like right here. And it's just unheard of almost to see these readings. 5,000 plus is a powder keg just waiting to go off. But in any case, though, I guess we'll call this one a stream for now. The plan is to be back later this evening, of course. So I guess I'll see you all then. Appreciate you all tuning into the discussion. Don't forget to hit that like button if you haven't already. Yeah, I mean, it's not a shoo-in that it'll happen. I mean, I wouldn't mind if this event turns into a little bit of a bust and then I just play guitar for about maybe an hour. I need to practice more anyway. But it has that ceiling to where if it does get going, oh boy, we could have some real kimchi on our hands. Put it that way. But everybody take care. Have a wonderful, well, I would say rest of your day, but like I said, you'll probably see me later. But everybody take care till then. Yeah. Bye bye.